We do have a shrinking number of families. We currently have the King and the Queen, and we have the Waleses. The Yorks are excommunicated, the Sussexes have disappeared. We don't actually have many working royals. We need Sophie and Edward. What are your thoughts about seeing her emerge this week?
We never think, you can never have that comparison more than when you think back to a few years ago and imagine Buckingham Palace balcony when the late Queen and Prince Philip were still around, and there was a very crowded balcony, and now it's as you say, there's really just the two households at front and centre. And also after the events of last year, when a couple of them were out of commission for a while, we really felt it. And that's when we saw the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh really step up. And I always feel when we see these pictures of Sophie out on engagements, or in this case the one with William, which was so much fun, the two of them were joking about having a drink together and they just had this easy banter. You can tell they get along. And when you see her out and about and engaging with people, it's always just a really easy thing to watch her do it. She does it with such ease. She connects with people so well. And you wonder why we don't see more from her, because exactly as you say, there's a space for it. So I think that hopefully there'll be more of that in the future, especially as the Waleses move up through the ranks, you know, down the line, whenever that is, because I think the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh have a really good way of sort of, and not to sound ageist at all, but to bridge the gap, you know, to broaden the demographic of appeal for the royals, because you've got William and Catherine that are in their 40s, and then you've got the others who are in their 70s, and you've got, Sophie and Edward sort of in the middle there, and people really like them, and they work very hard.
Well, they're seasoned professionals as well.
Yeah.
They've been doing this for a long... They were doing this way before the Sussexes arrived, to be honest. You know, way before Meghan arrived. Sophie and Edward were doing lots of great work. What do you think they bring?
Well, she's not afraid to tackle, and to finish that thought too, she's not afraid to tackle the tough issues. We've seen Sophie really get out there in some of the conversations that are a little bit more taboo, you know, and she goes out into these war-torn countries and she's speaking about sexual violence and things that, you know, they're extremely difficult topics to cover, but it's something she's never shied away from. And I think that's what she can really bring to the table. And again, I think people respond to it well when they see it. I want to see more of it.
While the world focused on Harry and Meghan's dramatic departure from the royal family, another royal couple has quietly stepped forward, steadily taking on more duties, more visibility, and perhaps a more vital role. They're not media sensations. They're not splashed across tabloids. But Prince Edward and his wife, Sophie, the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, are increasingly being viewed as the calm, steady hands stepping in where the Sussexes left off. Today, we explore the rise of Edward and Sophie and ask the question, are they replacing Meghan and Harry in the working royal family? In January 2020, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle announced they would be stepping back as senior members of the royal family. The so-called Megxit made headlines across the globe and triggered a major shift in the structure of the firm. Gone were two of the most charismatic and globally followed members of the family, leaving not just a PR void, but a practical one. Charities lost their patrons. International tours were cancelled. The younger generation of royals was suddenly 2 figures lighter. In response, King Charles III, even before taking the throne, began to quietly reposition the monarchy for a new era, leaner, less scandal-prone, and focused more on duty than dazzle. Amid this transition, one couple stepped into the light, not dramatically, not by choice, but out of loyalty.
She's a lovely person too, and a joy to photograph, but for some reason, newspapers and TV don't publish it, don't run the stories. They don't go to India when she goes to India. They don't go to Mali and these places where she goes. It just seems that all the good work she does goes unreported.
I just wonder, partly that I think is the fault of the palace, because I don't think often they don't tell us in advance where she's going and only tell us when she's already got there, which doesn't help when you've got, you know, to dispatch cameras halfway around the world. And I agree with you, she does do some fantastic work in the Middle East and Africa, you know, helping children who, you know, are suffering from potential blindness. In adulthood. So yes, she could do a lot more, and I think she is a real asset. I think it's beholden on Buckingham Palace to put her out there more, if, of course, that's what she wants to do. But I completely agree with you. And when I started covering this job, we had so many households, you kind of lost count of them. You didn't really need the Wessexes as they were then, or the Edinburghs as they are now. But you kind of do now. It is feeling a little bit thin on the ground at the moment. So
and their kids as well. You know, I was thinking about this. We've got George and Charlotte and Louis. There is no doubt that they are going to be on the world stage when it's the time. They will be out there. People already are very engaged in watching them. But there are a lot of years, hopefully for them, before they need to be out there as working royals. They're quite young. George is still 11. So you look at then the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh's kids. We've got Lady Louise is 21 and James is 17. I don't believe either of them are taking the HRH title. I don't know what interest they have in becoming working royals, but we saw the late Queen bring in her cousins when she was Queen, and they helped out on engagements and stuff. And I think that we could see that possibly down the line when William becomes the king. He might call in them because, again, they're more of an appropriate age to be able to help out with royal duties.
Well, it's a sensible move, I mean, that you've raised there, bringing in Lady Louise. I think graduates this summer. I mean, she's one of the cleverest royals on the roster. I mean, she was a straight A student at school. She's gone to university and she's absolutely smashing it at university. She could be a massive asset. Do you think about the Edinburgh children maybe stepping up in the future?
I think it depends if they want to, and I think there has to be led by then, doesn't it? Because there's no point in the institution, the grey suits as Meghan called them, forcing them to do something they don't want to do. But if that's what they want to do, there is definitely space for them. And I think we've seen, particularly with Lady Louise, who was a very sort of shy teenager, we've seen her grow in confidence over the years as well. When we do see her at big public engagements, she does look a lot more confident now.
Well, Sophie's always been called the kind of secret weapon, hasn't she? And I could see potential.
But too secret.
Prince Edward, the late Queen's youngest son, and his wife Sophie have for years operated quietly under the radar. Married since 1999, the pair has built a reputation for dependable public service and unwavering discretion. Edward inherited his father Prince Philip's legacy role, taking on leadership of the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme. Sophie, meanwhile, has grown into one of the hardest-working royals, particularly on issues of sexual violence, disability awareness, and youth development. Following Queen Elizabeth II's passing in 2022, King Charles granted Edward the long-promised title of Duke of Edinburgh. With it came increased public presence and new expectations. Let's be clear, Edward and Sophie aren't here to replace Harry and Meghan in style or global popularity, but they have increasingly filled the structural gap in royal duties. Sophie now undertakes dozens of engagements annually, many of them international. She recently represented the Crown in the Caribbean and was praised for her diplomacy and authenticity. Edward, long viewed as more introverted than his older siblings, has emerged with a quiet dignity that aligns with the current royal messaging: traditional, loyal, and scandal-free. The couple's growing presence at state occasions, military events, and Commonwealth ceremonies has not gone unnoticed.
No one knows about her.
So secret we never see her in the papers. That's how secret she is. Yeah.
But Lady Louise could be, that person that steps up. I'm just wondering whether the kind of House of Edinburgh could replace the House of Sussex at some stage.
I mean, I don't think replace like for like. I think they could be an additional resource for Buckingham Palace. Yes, of course. I mean, Prince Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh now, recently celebrated his 60th birthday, so they're not spring chickens either, but I take your point that they are that sort of generation in between William and Kate and the King and Queen. But yes, I think it really has to depend on whether the kids want to do it. And if they do, then I think that there's plenty of work for them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, just to pull back the curtain slightly on the rota that we do, you were talking there about Buckingham Palace maybe giving them more exposure. It's a case of we do rotas for William and Catherine, for the King and Queen. We're kind of invited along to cover those engagements.
Yeah. But sometimes with Princess Anne, for example, when she went back to the hospital in Bristol.
It's only occasional for Anne
I agree.
and the Edinburghs, isn't it? But we would love to do that, and I think viewers and readers would love to read
about it. I
don't
think Anne's bothered much about it anyway.
No, she doesn't care whether there are 20 cameras or no cameras.
She couldn't care less if you was there or not, I promise you, because if you're there, she's just like a father. She just ignores you. She just treats you like a telegraph pole, like a father. She just walks around you and carries on. I don't think she could care less if they were there. But I tell you what, I'd like to see do some work. Princess Eugenie. Mm-hmm. She's a fantastic kid, and she's doing so much for these children with these back problems, and she really cares. And I know I've got a granddaughter that had to have this operation, and And Eugenie was so kind to her. She so helped her, you know, and I think I'd like to see her do more, perhaps Beatrice as well, you know, but they seem to be sidelined.
Matt, I remember you mentioned about the sort of the rota, and I remember a few years ago, it was just as we were coming out of COVID. Of course, Harry and Meghan had already left, and they put on a rota which was very unusual at the time for the then Countess of Wessex at a pub in Surrey, somewhere not far from where they lived in Bagshot Park, and it was about her sort of encouraging the hospitality industry after that terrible time they had during COVID. I thought then that was the start of us seeing this happen much more regularly, but it hasn't. We're now in 2025, and it is, as you point out, we don't often get rota jobs for the Duchess of Edinburgh. And the one in Cornwall that she did with William last week was, again, a rare exception.
For years, Sophie Wessex was one of the royal family's best-kept secrets. But today, her approval ratings are climbing. During Queen Elizabeth's funeral events, many viewers took note of Sophie's poise and grace. Social media dubbed her the unofficial Queen's confidant. Her relatability: she's a working mother, a former PR executive, and someone who has weathered royal life without controversy, has made her increasingly likable among the British public. Edward, too, has earned quiet respect. Once dismissed as the Forgotten Windsor, he now represents continuity. He's not flashy, but he shows up. And in a monarchy that prizes stability, that matters. Harry and Meghan brought global attention and cultural relevance to the monarchy. Their marriage was historic, their interviews captivating, their brand instantly recognizable. But they also brought turbulence. Edward and Sophie offer the opposite. Their loyalty is unquestioned. They do not make headlines. They do not overshadow the crown. And that's exactly what the royal family seems to want right now. They embody the traditional values of duty, modesty, and service, values that the post-Elizabethan monarchy is eager to reinforce. Sophie, in particular, has become a royal workhorse, often clocking more engagements than Prince William or Catherine, the Princess of Wales. They lack the star power Harry and Meghan command in the US and beyond.
Rare but welcome. Are we all agreeing on that as well?
Yeah.
Oh, this is brilliant. What a show.
It's a palace call-out. If they're watching,
Yep.
you want the rotas.
We want
yeah.
more.
Okay.
Now, one person, two people we cannot avoid, or it's now four people we cannot
Arthur's
avoid.
going to walk out.
We have to talk about Meghan's Instagram. It started on January the 1st with a huge explosion, you know, and it hasn't stopped. It's been on fire all year. I was going through, at the end of last year, I was going through all the Sun front pages, and I put them all out on X, the royal front pages, to show what had happened throughout the royal year. And Meghan wasn't on it. I think she was on once with Harry when Harry was in Canada at like a pre-Invictus Games event. She wasn't there. She wasn't big news last year. She is big news now because of her Instagram.
Well, it's in her voice. She's now, since January 1, like it or hate it, she's now releasing information and videos and personal looks at her life and details of her businesses and launching things all through her own account. It's been a lot to take in. I think last week took a lot of people by surprise with the twerking video.
It was a lot to take in, wasn't it?
That's for sure. I honestly, genuinely had to go to her page to make sure it had originated there because I thought it was a parody. But no, it was real.
Why is she doing this? Why is she... That twerking video, for instance, and the Disneyland video, I mean, these have gone viral. Why is she doing this?
Well, I'm trying... to separate the two thoughts, I feel, you know, we're discussing it in the context of royals and royal family. But now I suppose we need to discuss it in terms of entertainment. She's someone who is now working as an influencer. The direct marketing campaign is to your Instagram audience. In that respect, I think she's got something like 42 million views on this video, which I think all of us were among them. But everyone I've ever spoken to seems to have been among them. In that regard, yes, there are eyes on her page. There are people watching what she's doing. That directly relates, I would assume, to the sales that she's having and eyes that are on her Netflix show and, you know, that are going to her website as ever. In that regard, again, look, personally, it was obviously very difficult to watch. It was quite cringeworthy. In that regard, I think, OK, you are generating headlines. That is the aim of people in this space. But then when you compare it to, you know, how we would react, you know, with the working royals putting out that kind of content, I think it's apples and oranges because, of course, looking at it through that filter, you think...
They're older, less tech-savvy, and less relatable to younger generations. And while respected, they don't attract the same level of international attention or global media coverage. The Sussexes were brand powerhouses. Edward and Sophie are dedicated public servants. This isn't about personality replacement. It's about functional replacement. And in that sense, Edward and Sophie are quietly succeeding. In the public eye? Not entirely. But in the machinery of the monarchy? Most definitely. They've filled engagements, strengthened international ties, and brought quiet dignity back into the spotlight. And most importantly, they've done it without asking for attention. As King Charles reshapes the monarchy for a modern world, balancing relevance with tradition, Edward and Sophie may just be the perfect pair to represent the new normal of royal life. What do you think? Are Edward and Sophie the right pair to carry forward the Windsor name in this transitional era? Or does the monarchy still need the global energy that Harry and Meghan once brought? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit the like button, subscribe for more royal deep dives, and tap the bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay thoughtful, stay curious.